Well, welcome to this mini episode of Alpine Intel Savvy Adjuster Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Nichols. This is a quick follow-up to our last episode, Large Loss Fire Investigations. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, you can find it on your favorite podcast platform. You may have noticed a small change to the title of this episode on your screen. We've updated these mini episodes to Take 10 rather than Take 5 to better reflect the time it takes to share this information with you. Today, I am joined again by our two national fire experts, lead fire investigators, Sean Williams and Jim Sealer. Thanks again for joining again.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So on our main episode, we talked about how you investigate a large loss fire, but today we're going to give adjusters a few tips on how they can create a plan of action for large losses before they even receive an assignment. So Jim, would you mind starting us off and telling us a little bit more about why it's so important to be prepared even before the claim comes in?
Sure. Well, I always try to coordinate, communicate with my client adjusters to let them know that it helps to have a checklist, to be prepared to go right down that checklist when a loss comes in so that they can reach out to their chosen, vetted, qualified, certified investigator and in preference a national company that can hopefully take the project from beginning to successful conclusion to include subrogation and potentially litigation if necessary. And have them make sure that they recognize the need for an immediate response for scene preservation, evidence preservation, factoring in the need for specialized equipment, specialized outside vendors, and the importance of having the trust and faith in their chosen investigator or firm they go with to have the confidence that that individual will follow their directions, communicate effectively, and help navigate their large, complex fire loss for whatever number of reasons, whether it be high dollar value loss, large square footage or footprint of the building or structure, to all sorts of environmental factors, governmental factors, jurisdictional factors. But just keeping in mind that it's imperative that there be an immediate response and that whoever they're going to select and partner with should be a proven individual that knows how to collaborate and work within the scope of their requirements.
Yeah, we talked about it on our main episode, but collaboration is key, right? You know, because you're not just going to have 3-4 people. It could be in the tens, right? It could be up to 40 people, you know, so on these large losses. So I would imagine maintaining relationships with key people is key as a good start. So Sean, as far as a checklist or something on this list that an adjuster should have, in-house resources, can we speak a little bit to that and kind of what they need to know as far as their in-house resources they may need to lean on?
So unless you're a large loss adjuster primarily, if you're just a standard adjuster and you do routine fires mostly, it's going to come at you pretty quick. So they're going to really want to reach out to a large loss team if they have one in-house. If that's something that their firm establishes, they need to reach out to that, but also their legal team, because these large loss events are going to create all kinds of legal issues between state, local jurisdictions. You could have EPA, DEQ, those kind of things going on. So they're going to really want to reach out to their legal team and get them in play right away. And then again, reach out to a firm that's national, that's able to assist them right away, and have people boots on the ground to be able to get right out there to the site and start to mitigate losses and mitigate any spoliation of evidence before it starts to happen. But in-house, I highly recommend your legal team to reach out to them, because it's gonna become a big issue quick.
Sure. Yeah. So it sounds like making sure your outside vendors are lined up, making sure to connect with the in-house resources, whether that's, if you're not on the large loss team, your large loss team, and then obviously looping in your legal representation as well. So that's a great start for an adjuster who has one of these land on their desk. So Jim, can you speak a little bit about the obstacles, right? Security issues, other stakeholders, really even safety in general, and what an adjuster needs to be prepared with?
Well, the purpose of the need for the immediate response with scene preservation and evidence preservation is so that you have a team or a lead investigator that understands the importance with the eventual outcome of this loss, that you need to coordinate with the public agency that's involved, with the incident commander if the fire department or law enforcement agency is still on scene, so that they recognize who you are, when you're going to arrive, and what your specific areas of interest are. Because oftentimes public agencies, they have their agenda that they're looking for to stay involved and identify whether or not a crime has been committed and whether or not it's something that they can determine the origin and cause on. And it's very important that this team, this individual, recognize that it's important to get there right away, to interview witnesses, to size up the scene from a visual perspective and standpoint, to start making decisions about what equipment might be needed, what special supplies, what other people need to be notified, readily identifying who has a stakeholder and an interest in this loss so that they can be notified. And then more importantly, that this individual recognizes how important it is to communicate with the adjuster and with their client carrier so that they are always up to date with what's happening on an hourly basis so that they can be making decisions in a timely manner. Because in these large complex loss scenarios, hours and days can mean millions of dollars to them in loss. And you as an investigator have a responsibility and a duty to make sure that you're doing your best to limit the loss moving forward and to preserve whatever is there so that it isn't affected by weather, isn't affected by lack of security, and that it isn't negatively impacted because you're not communicating effectively.
Sure. And it all goes back to that first point of collaboration, right? Being able to collaborate with people. Yep. Long-standing relationships, things like that. Sean, speak a little bit to understanding the budgetary constraints, if you will, and why that's so important for an adjuster to kind of know.
Sure. So going into this, we have to realize that a large loss fire or complex fire incident is going to require probably a lot of dollars to be thrown at it in the process of trying to determine the origin and cause of this fire, right? So figuring out where those funds are going to come from, who they have to go through on their management chain to authorize funds. Some of this stuff can be billed out later. Some of the stuff could be held back. But a lot of this stuff's going to need initial payments right away, right? Where you're going to need to get contractors out there that are going to have some kind of funding right away. So for the adjuster to have an idea of where to obtain those funds from, and some of those may be large up front, is going to be huge. And then on our side of it, we realize that they do have a budget. So we're not going to be able to just spend carte blanche. We're under their budget constraints. So for them to be open and honest with me as an investigator, as a team, to say, hey, here's our budget, and so I know how to keep myself in line with that budget, it's going to be huge. Because I don't want to overspend what they're looking to throw at this. And again, I don't know what to throw at it if they don't tell me what their budgets are. So we do a lot of cost projections on routine fires. I think cost projections as you go through the process on a large loss fire become just as important to be able to keep track of this for them and for us.
Sure. Jim, anything to add as far as budgets are concerned?
Absolutely. Everything Sean touched on. And then I always, as Sean does, we try to work with the interested parties that are present to share costs. We recognize that there doesn't need to be a duplication of effort. There doesn't need to be a duplication of expenditure. So we will oftentimes work with whoever we can to make sure that our adjuster is aware of who he or she can communicate with to share costs and spread that expense over half a dozen or a couple of dozen different parties, or have one party paying for a certain piece of equipment, another party paying for another piece or supplies. But budgetary concerns are always at the forefront of the lead investigator as well. Well,
it's super valuable information, guys. I appreciate you sharing your insights. So to recap, claim hits the desk, be aware of your outside vendors, your investigators you have access to. Maintain relationships. Collaboration and communication sound like it's pretty key. Make sure to lean on in-house resources like your large loss team. If you are not on that team, loop in legal representation. Know the obstacles before you get to the claim site, and really have a good understanding of budgetary constraints. So again, thank you so much for your insights and for joining. And as always, thanks to you, the listener, for joining us for this mini episode. So if you're interested in learning more about how investigators determine origin and cause, frequently claimed properties, and more about fire losses in general, make sure to check the show notes for additional resources. And as always, thanks for joining us again today, and we'll see you next time.